like
Enjoy the show. I mean, no, Star Trek, that's a different thing.
I got you.
Thundercats, I enjoy the show, right?
Hello. And so as I was saying, I'm sorry.
You were early. You snuck up on me.
I know, what's in it?
5:56.
Tigra?
Is there gonna be food?
Later.
Cat food?
Cat food. Oh.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, the reason I called this meeting. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
We start chanting Tigra?
Or a monkey.
Hey, watch it, pal. Tigra, who needs it? So.
It's Kenney.
Anybody, so quiet out there?
How are you enjoying the convention so far?
Huh?
How are you enjoying the convention so far?
What's it to you?
We want you to be happy too.
What? Happy? This has got nothing to do with happy. This is show business. Who needs happy?
Oh, look, there he is. Just let him know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Kenney!
Do we have to kiss?
Oh.
Didn't say that last night.
Oh.
Hi, everybody.
What's that?
How are you? Great. Good.
That's it?
That's it, we're done. That's it. That was the question and that was the answer.
I had the intro music going. I had everything, and then he came in, and I hadn't even set the nameplates out yet. And
Oh my God.
he was ready. He was ready to go.
So you came early again, didn't you?
Again.
I'm sorry, what? It's not that kind of a Q&A.
Why are you laughing on that? Oh, you're filthy. You know
I know,
that?
I'm gonna kiss him again so I can get it up.
That's why I did it quickly.
This is the digital age.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
Facebook.
that's right.
YouTube.
So we have a moderator. Are you going to?
I'm moderating-ish.
So I should just probably shut up now. Go ahead, moderate.
He just called me a goathead.
Oh, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Q&A. So feel free to ask any questions you want. I'll start out. How did
Can I
you?
just say, first of all, I'm a little disappointed. I thought it was going to be a T&A.
That's later on tonight at the PJ party. Yes, pajama party. How did you gentlemen both get started?
Well, I caught the flight yesterday.
How did you get started, Peter? Peter's has actually a more interesting story than mine is.
Is it?
I think so.
Well, then you tell.
Peter was an accountant.
That's true, yes.
Before,
that's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the question was, how did we get started in the business?
I was a young fellow who had gone to school thinking life would take a certain path, and it didn't seem to be doing that for some strange reason. And then someone I knew said a talent agent was looking for someone to help with some bookkeeping, some part-time bookkeeping. And that was something I had sort of picked up along the way, just sort of basic stuff, no CPA, nothing like that. And so I was a talent bookkeeper at a talent agency for voiceover and on-camera commercial actors. And then when I would talk to some of the talent to let them know that they had a check, they had a payment, some of them started saying to me, you've got a nice voice. You should think about it. And then the people at the agency were kind enough to sort of encourage me, because as I met people, in fact, one of the people I first met was the wonderful Bob McFadden, who folks, fans, know the name. He was Snarf and Slithe and, all sorts of other wonderful things.
Frankenberry.
Frankenberry, he was the voice of Frankenberry. And so my introduction to Bob McFadden was he came into the office doing his Paul Lynde, hello people, and he started doing some sort of an accent, and I kind of did an accent back at him, and he just, whatever, he took note of me, you know, he saw me there, and a little banter and such, and I just felt this like, wow, this is fun. And then people said, this is a business, this is a career, you can do this kind of work. And I'd been doing silly voices, accents, stuff since I was a kid, alienating relatives by imitating their accent. And so this agent was kind enough to guide me along, and I created a reel-to-reel demo tape. So that's what we did in those days. And then they kind of introduced me to another agent who started to send me out on auditions. The first audition I ever did, I got the job and thought, well, this is going to be easy. Yeah. And of course, then reality sets in and you have to learn the craft. It's a type of acting. You have to learn how to use a microphone. You have to learn that it's your enjoyment is not what they're after. They want to hear their commercial or whatever it is the way they want to hear it. So that went on for a time. And then came the happy experience in 1985, I guess it was, 84, maybe we auditioned, that it was just another audition, for this time for a cartoon. I said, whoa, cartoon, that's great. And as it turned out, I got the job. And here we are, years later, still, enjoying the experience, talking about it, meeting people who share that enjoyment.
I really want to apologize because I remember it being a much more interesting story.
Me too. Oh, you're one of the interested. Yeah. Well, I was a samurai warrior. I was a 5th Dan black belt, and
That's the one I remember.
Yeah, that was. I'm sorry.
And
Forget everything I said.
King Kong was in there or something.
Yeah.
And you
Bride
had-
of Frankenstein.
Yeah, and you had
Yeah.
to kill Superman. That's the story I
I
remember.
don't tell that much.
I started in radio when I was 15 years old, back in Peoria, Illinois, where I'm from, and that's how I got into. That led to. I started as a disc jockey, playing Beatles records, James Brown, and things like that. And I always had done. I was a class clown, believe it or not, and I always had gotten in trouble in school doing impressions of people I'd seen on television, doing cartoon voices. I always say I wish I had a nickel for, I do have a nickel for every teacher or counselor or probation officer who said to me at some point, Larry, I hope when you grow up you find a way to make a living from your little jokes and funny voices. So that's how I got started, and because as a disc jockey, I would incorporate cartoon voices and impressions of famous people into my radio show, and then that led to people asking me to do them on commercials, And then like as Peter said, then came along this thing that none of us in New York really had done, because all the animation up until then, all the animated shows that we grew up with and that everybody had seen before, Thundercats, I think, had been done in LA or maybe some in Florida at Disney Studios, but it was unheard of that an animated show was going to be recorded in New York, and we ended up doing quite a few of them: Thundercats, Silverhawks, Tiger Sharks,
Or as we say, adjective noun. Adjective noun, Thundercats, Tiger Shark.
I was told there'd be no grammar.
Oh, you were out that day.
Our class
Yeah, there's gonna be a test.
Our class didn't get that.
Yeah.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking. Yeah.
Your typical day for voice acting, like when it starts, how long it is, and the long.
There's no typical day. I mean, it's.
That starts 8 o'clock in the morning till 7 at night. It's just no let up. It's terrible.
Horrible.
It's, like Larry said, there is no such thing as a typical day. I mean, Larry is, one of the busier guys in the business, I would say. Certainly has been for, they've done lots of different kinds of work in the field. I came into this not from radio or from theater, so I was more, specifically in voiceover, although I did from time to time over the years had the pleasure of doing an on-camera commercial. But it was whenever the agent called with an audition. It could be, we could have one or two things in a given day and have the rest of the day off. It could be running from place to place, doing whatever it was required of the audition. And when you got work, you usually had to reserve, they would reserve an hour or 2 hours, depending on the kind of work. Sometimes you'd go in and you'd be done in 15 minutes. Sometimes an hour and a half later, you'd be working on the same sentence because you had 6 different people in the control room from the agency, from the client, whoever, whatever product it is, saying, no, could you stress the a little more? No, I think he's stressing the too much. So, and then you would go on to whatever was next. But the day just came together with, maybe the day before you'd find out what your appointments were the next day.
Yeah, there's also seasonal fluctuation, especially in the commercial voice, doing radio and TV commercials. We find usually that the summer is very slow. Fall is very busy because they're doing commercials for the new TV show, the new episodes that they're starting in the fall. Things get very slow around holiday time from the second week of December usually until February. There's very little work done.
Because they've already done whatever commercials they're going to do for the holidays.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
already, that work is already.
So you have that, and then the fact that individually, it may be very busy generally for the voiceover acting community, but you may find for whatever reason that the kind of stuff you do is not in demand, is too much for a few months. It really fluctuates. The point is that there's no typical day where, for example, those of you who have real jobs, I don't mean that. I mean that where you have to be at work at 9 and you get until 5, and you know pretty much what you're going to be doing during the day. We don't. I mean, we usually know maybe a day or two, 3 days at the most before a job that you got the job. You'll go to an audition. Your agent may call you and say, tomorrow I want you to go at 10 o'clock to such and such a studio or such and such an advertising agency, and you'll be auditioning for this particular product. So you go, and then you'll either get a call within a couple of days saying you got that job, and it records 2 days from now at such and such a time, or you won't hear anything, which means you didn't get that particular job.
Right, and usually you don't hear anything. You don't know. You don't know why you didn't get the job. You just know you didn't hear anything about it. Or sometimes there are things what they used to call first refusals, which meant you're in the running.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, oh, you got a first refusal for next Wednesday. Yeah. Are you available next Wednesday? Of course you're available.
I don't know if, I'm sorry, Peter, I don't know if this still holds true, but at one point, I saw the figures that, it was in some trade magazine, that you were a successful voiceover commercial announcer if you won 1 out of 15 auditions that you did. 1 out of 15. That meant you were successful because you do lots and lots of auditions. So it just gives you an idea. Now you may get lucky, and in the period of a month, you may, do 20 auditions and get 5 or 6 of them. That's a hell of a good month.
Did you ever do that?
Well, I usually get 1 or 2. I didn't. I wasn't going to bring that up.
Let's see.
Because I go as different people. I don't always go as me. I fool them like that. Sometimes I go as Ken Lawrence.
Yeah. Huh?
Use different names. Don't you do that? Do you use different names?
Huh?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I did that
sometimes
too.
I go as Lance Stardust.
That explains all.
Yes, in fact,
This is for both of you. What's the oddest voice acting job that you guys ever done?
Hardest?
Honest.
Weird.
Oh, Oddest.
He said oddest, Grandpa. Strangest.
Hottest? Well, none of them are hot. Because this is New York. We don't do these in Florida. It's hot down here.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Grandpa.
Oddest, the oddest job. Well, it's an interesting question. It's a good question. I've never been asked that.
I think the strangest experience that I ever had in voice acting was a long time ago when we do dubbing foreign films, which really doesn't happen that much anymore in the States. Nowadays, people want to hear the original language and read the subtitles. But there was a period when dubbing foreign films was a thing that you got to do. And I once had a job to dub the voice of an actor. It was an Icelandic film, which I think the Icelandic language has no vowels, I'm pretty sure. And the character was a stutterer. I'm not kidding. It really was. It was sheer torture. Because to try to speak English to the
That's very good.
Thank you. And that is Icelandic.
I've never heard them talk, but that's very good.
That's
That also explains, I didn't know that they have no vowels in their
It
language.
seems
Which
that way.
explains why they don't have Wheel of Fortune. You can't have that game, you can't buy a vowel.
So I would say that was the oddest job I ever had.
That is odd. I remember one that it was for Titleist golf balls. And it was a television spot, but I was not doing on camera. They wanted me to, they'd already filmed some, I think it was Jeff Miller, was there a golfer, Jeff? Anyway, this is back in the 70s, early 80s, and one of the top golfers of the day was doing this commercial on camera, and they had filmed him underwater. He had hit his ball into a pond, and he was saying something under, but so they wanted me to dub in what he was saying underwater.
Oh God.
So I said, okay, that's not that hard to do. You know, I said, give me a cup of water. And, the word was four. It was four. You know, he was going to hit the ball, and he said four. So I go, which I thought was great. He went, no. And the engineer came in with a fish bowl.
Oh, good
Full
Lord.
of water.
Put your head in.
And they told me to put my head in.
They were drowning.
And I thought, well, okay. It was going to be a network TV spot, and it was probably going to make, 40 grand a year. And I started to do it, and I thought, you're not going to put the microphone in there, are you? That's when I put my head in, and they had a towel around. Really? Put my head in. But the funniest thing was, it sounded just the same when I went like this. And probably that's what they used anyway. That was the others. Good question.
Wow.
I've never been asked.
Sure doesn't sound like roar?
Or. Maybe that's what he was yelling. You whore!
I think, I'm sorry, I think it was, and then the charming lady with the camera, and I'm going to keep saying she's charming because she's going to be taking our picture.
What's that on your arm?
Oh, that's a music player that some of my outfits have music. I'm not wearing an outfit.
You mean your
right?
clothes have music?
Well, not this. I brought outfits to wear for the weekend, but I came straight from work, so I'm not changed yet into my costumes.
But they have music?
Wow.
Yeah, some of my costumes have sound effects.
You need to come up here because this
I have
is much more
I have a
interesting.
Well, I don't have anything now because
Yeah.
I'm not even unpacked yet. I came straight from work, but.
Okay. Well, I was just curious. Wow.
I don't know, but your question's probably forget it, but okay. Try anyway. Make it interesting.
Gentlemen, just want to thank you again very much for being here for one. It's wonderful seeing you. You were talking before, obviously, the camaraderie amongst you in the studio. Peter, we were talking at your table about everyone all in the same room, and certain outtake that's been floating around the internet. But personal voice recordings from any of your time together, you know, things that the general public never would get to hear.
I do not.
Well, we do have, what we do have is a wonderful video that Lynn Lipton, who played Chitara on Thundercats, made. Remember that one?
Yeah, you still have it?
She made it as a Christmas, I still have it. She made it as a Christmas gift for us back in, well, the show had been on a couple of years. So probably in '87 she made it, '86 or '87. She brought a video camera, which I think those were fairly new back then. No, we hadn't said this. Anyway, she brought it to the studio one day while we were recording 2 shows. And when she wasn't on mic, you know, she was just walking around filming us doing different things, outtakes and all. And then she would film it out in the lunchroom, you know. And then she put it all together and gave each of us a copy of it on DVD, I guess. Did we have DVD?
Mine, yeah, it degraded.
Really?
Yeah. And so I don't have it anymore. Yeah.
Well, I haven't played mine in a long time. And I have asked her as recently as last 3 weeks ago when we were in
Bridgeport,
Connecticut.
Yeah.
She joined us for a Connecticut Comic-Con, which cleverly I thought they named it Comic-Con with 2 N's.
Yeah.
And
sometimes you have to spell the jokes out. That's what.
So I asked her while we were sitting there one day, I said, I'm just remembering, because people ask a lot of times, do you have any old pictures of while you're filming? And I said, you know, the fans would love to see it.
Very much so.
And she said, no, I made that just for us, and I want to keep it just for us. I said, well, okay, bitch. Well, you know, I've always referred to Chitara as the original Thundercats Ho.
Now, Thundercats, Ho. Why? Because when you say Ho, Ho.
Ho, ho, ho. Ho.
Oh.
But that does exist, and it was actually a really, I mean, you get to see some of us napping while the other ones were recording, and see a couple outtakes on there.
Now,
other than that, I don't think anybody bothered to take, because you have to realize this is what we're doing for a living, you know, and you just don't go around taking pictures.
Well, not even so much that, but how about audio recordings that the studio had that obviously never made it onto air?
Well, so the outtakes are from that, of course.
Yeah, that's just one little clip, though. I was wondering if you
there
guys...
are many of them. There are many of them. You guys all have heard some of the outtakes from Thundercats and Silverhawks.
I could play it for you if you wanted, but...
Oh,
there are children.
yeah.
Well, I don't know if you ever heard the Silverhawks outtakes, but my favorite one is, can I see how's it go? Oh man, I can't tell.
Now, I would just say that, just to demonstrate that Larry and I are not actually twins separated at birth.
I think that's pretty obvious.
Larry, freewheeling, you know, just let it all go. Yeah, he's saying what he's thinking and all that. And I remember very specifically during that experience of recording these things, saying, yeah, watch your language, because this is all being recorded, and who knows where it's going to go and all that. And apparently that was important enough to me that was a consideration. So there's no record of
you had foresight, because I remember thinking back then. We're talking about the mid-'80s, you know, when there was no internet, as we know it now. And back then, there were always, quote, outtakes from anytime you got a bunch of actors on the stage or on the set or in the studio, you're going to have outtakes. Somebody's going to fluff a line and everybody else is going to respond to it in a funny way. Well, it used to happen to them. We used to joke that the engineer, somebody would say, that's going to be on Jeff's Christmas party reel, meaning probably recording engineers, whenever they had a bunch of friends together, I'm sure they would say, you want to hear what happens at Thundercat sessions when that never gets on the air? They would play it for them, you know. One day,
So we have to track some of them down then.
yeah. One day in about 1998 or whatever, my son says, Dad, listen to this, what's on the internet?
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, but you, that's right. You were saying you never know who's going to hear this.
Yeah.
Oh, don't be stupid, Peter. There's no internet yet.
What do you mean internet? What is that?
Yeah, no idea.
This lady in the front had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could both give us examples of like your favorite kind of voice to do, and then the voice that's most challenging for you to do. Because I imagine you don't always get to do the easy voices. Probably sometimes you do voices that are maybe a little bit more difficult.
Peter did one of the hardest ones, I think, to do.
Well, you already gave us an example of kind of one of the hardest. I
Well, you
think.
did a lot of the rough ones. Was it gravelly voices?
There was, yeah, the one that was physically the toughest for me was the Demolisher. Thank God it was only one episode. Because I don't remember, we would get the script beforehand to read because we had our parts. We had to, know when we were doing what. And there was the Demolisher, which meant there's going to be an audition in the studio. And because that's how we, found out who was going to do what guest character. And so the day before, whenever it was, I thought, Demolish. So, okay, let me think of a voice. And I came up with this harsh, gravelly voice. And even as I was coming up, I said, okay, I have to find a way to do this that's not going to hurt so much. And so I kind of worked on it a bit and had, did the episode. And by the end of the episode, as much as I was careful as I could be, it really, I couldn't have done another episode after that one. So that was probably the hardest.
Do it for us.
No, I won't. I'm the Demolisher. Yeah, I've come here to tear the place apart.
It's not, don't hurt yourself. That kind of voice can
No more,
that can tear you up because you did 2 or 3 of them in the course of the show that were really
Something like that.
gravelly like that. I did Jaggleman. It was not, it was like, we must get the Thundercats, yes. But it was not like, the thing about his voice.
Even Monkey was sort of like that.
Monkey, that's when I was thinking of yours.
Monkey, the regular character.
Yeah, but with all.
He was like that. And so when he had to yell,
Yeah.
we'd do the sound effects at the end of the episode, because they'd save that,
Yeah.
to save your voice. We'd do the yells and the screams and the fighting sounds and all that at the end. So yeah, when Monkey had a big, and the episode where Monkey took over the world.
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah, I remember because you're always going, when you were doing Monkey, because you really belted out that, like that.
And speaking, when he would speak his lines, it all had to carry and have sound. And but that like Larry's saying, that raspy sound.
I didn't fortunately have any of those that was really raspy like that. On commercials and on program narration, I did for years, I did a show called Best Week Ever on VH1. Thank you. And that was kind of rough to do because it was, it's the 3rd week of February 2010, the best week ever! And then an hour of that, so that would get a little rough at the end. And I use that same voice on Skittles commercials. Feel the rainbow, taste the rainbow. But that's all I ever have to say. I only have to say 6 words for them, so.
I did, boy, what is with me and the raspy voices? I did a character
Well, we all said, give it to Peter.
Well, for more recently, for a video game called, I think it was called Dark Shadows 2, something like that, where I was the little creature companion to one of the lead characters, and he ended up sounding like the evil twin of the Geico Gecko.
But for less money.
Yeah, a lot less money.
So he was a cockney sort of fellow, little cockney guy, and he said, oh yeah, we'll kick him right in the jubblies. Kill him, take their life.
Oh, why
I sometimes get a little raspy when I'm doing Cocoa Puffs. I've been doing Cocoa Puffs for 35 years. When they want over and over, Yahoo! I'm Cocoa Puffs! Cocoa Puffs! I will also can choke you, but it's not hard to do.
I mean, the silly things we get to do. For a period of time, I was Inspector Clouseau for Owens Corning, housing, insulation, the commercials. A silly thing, sort of the odd question about odd jobs I had to do. The cookware, the French cookware company, Le Creuset, heavy stuff, the enameled heavy steel pots and all, they would include a VHS. This is going back, I guess, a year or two, a VHS tape of instructions with a chef, a French chef, to help people get the most out of Le Creuset. Well, it turned out the French chef's English, his French accent made the English hard to understand. So I got the job of redubbing the French chef with a French accent, but a French accent that Americans could easily understand. So
A faux French accent.
a faux French. Ooh.
You didn't use the French
Quel
word.
dommage.
French. Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Larry, if I may,
Oh, oh la la. You would like me to preach your bottom? That's all the French.
Larry, if I may say, I mean, you have such a naturally deep voice. I mean, somebody like Wiley.
Not really. That's acting.
But I mean, somebody like Wiley Kid, I mean, that must have taken its toll on.
That was him.
No, pardon me. That
Wiley
was.
Cat, yeah. That's
Oh,
right.
Wiley
Wiley
Kid.
Cat,
Wiley
yeah.
Cat.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But
I'm sorry.
Don't I also have a deep and manly voice? Well, if you think so, yes.
But the higher voices are not that hard to maintain. It's when you have to get down
A
and go,
little gravelly like this, you know.
Okay.
In a world where everyone is dead. In a world. That's what I said.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
For each of you, what was your favorite episode to record?
I don't
If
have.
you have it.
I don't. Well,
Or maybe
I
most
guess yes, I do, and I don't remember the name of it or the number. Well, I say that because most of them do. Well, they know. I love it when somebody says,
Mr. Kenney, in episode 126. When the door opened, Lionel came in, the sword woman was in his right hand. However,
I don't want to cast aspersions, but some of you people are scary.
it's an animator thing. I don't know. But what was the question? Now I forgot.
Interesting episode.
Yes, it was when Lionel was a young boy, so it was probably one of the first episodes.
Yeah.
And that was a little challenging because it had to sound like Lionel, but still sound like Lionel, but when he was like 10 years old, you know. So I just ended up, being myself and talking like I talk and everything, but just making a little bit higher pitch, and it worked. I guess it worked.
Kept the job, they didn't fire you.
We're still here. We're here talking. We're answering the questions, ain't we?
I don't know, sort of, I don't know. Interesting episodes, fun episodes. Certainly the one where Monkey got to take over the world because, he crashes and burns in the end, and it was great fun. One of my favorite guest characters that I did was Hachiman, Samurai Warrior. I've spoken to a couple of you about it. And so, to get to do that was great fun too, And a lot of the episodes were just a joy to do because, for me, I was relatively new to the job, so to speak, and I got to work with people who had been doing it for a while, were professionals, and I'd known them, seen their names, heard about them over the years I've been in the business before then. And so people like Larry, honestly, and Bob McFadden, and Earl Hammond, and Earl Hyman, really talented folks that I got to work with. And as had been the case for me, generally speaking, as a newcomer earlier on, I would meet people that, to me, were celebrities. But for the most part, in the world of voiceovers, everybody, they were just regular folks, and they treated me just as if I was one of the gang. And it was kind of an awakening for me. Wow, I'm an equal. You know, inside I'm going,
They like me. I'm a kid out of the. I'm like one of them.
It wasn't that. We figured you'd do our taxes for us. He didn't.
no. And it's a good, probably a real good thing for you. Anyway. So, you know, for me, now to be in the studio with 4 experienced professionals in this, you know, and here I am, and I'm one of the gang. I get to audition for things. I, you know, get some of the parts. I don't get some of the parts, and the fun goes on.
You know why? Because you were great. Because you did a great job. No, I mean, you were new at it, and we all knew you were new, but the minute you started doing it, we thought, this guy's got it, you know.
Well, that's the example of the sort of kindness that people exhibited, you know, in the business. And, that's what made it so much fun to be in this business, is the people you would meet in the community that would build, the guys who knew all the latest jokes when you'd meet in an audition, the people you'd get a little friendlier with, you go to lunch, you know, spend some time, whatever. That was one of the great things about the business.
I think everybody in our business, if they have any sense at all, realizes how lucky we are to be making a living at something that we love doing. You know, I mean, you think about it, we all, you know, I always had this feeling that someday God is going to come down to earth, and she's going to say,
oh, quit pandering, quit pandering.
And look at us and say, all right, so you guys, what do you do for a living? Well, and how much money do you make? Well, no. That shit's over. No. From now on, you get a little cubicle like everybody else. You make this amount of money, and this is what you do.
And you start with a stack of paper over here, and you move it over here, one sheet at a time.
Credits by the window, debits by the door. When you were accounting, is that what you did? Credits by the window, debits by the door. That's how I would have done it.
I took accounting, a couple of accounting courses in school, and that's it. You're right.
I bet you guys had no idea that when you came in here, there were that many questions and answers involving the world of accounting.
Learn something.
Yeah, can you do your famous Lionel?
Can I do my famous lion, though?
Yeah. Like
Sure.
Thundercat.
Oh, no, I can't do that.
Okay.
I'd have to charge you. Of course I can. Would you like me to do that?
Yes.
Yes.
First we'll do. Sword of omens, come to my hand. I, Lion-O, command it. Thunder, 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 Thundercats. Ho! Some kid about 12 years old walked up to me I was in San Antonio, Texas, doing a Comic-Con, and he walked up to me and he says, "Can you still do it?"
That's funny.
Yeah, kid, I can still do it.
Well, what's so great about him?
Oh, here we go again. Sibling rivalry.
Oh, funny.
Good question. Yes, sir.
Like either whether with Thundercats or any other characters, when you get it, do they give you a direction they want the character to go, or do they just say, here, make it up?
No, you don't make it up. I mean, it's all scripted.
Well, I mean, like,
Well, you mean-
like
you
with
mean the
Tigra.
voice.
You mean the voice?
Yeah, well, you know, developing the voice of the character, like the Tigra, did they give you a direction, like how they wanted?
There is a general, always at least a general direction. Tigra, an adult, superhero, male, you know, so they're right away,
Right away, it's probably not going to sound like that.
you know, so there was that general direction.
They'll tell you about it. When we auditioned for the show, I recall we walked into, or at least when I did, I walked into this room and they had, the walls were plastered with drawings of the characters and of the Thunder Tank and of all the...
Now, you're not talking about the studio, right? You have a regular
No,
cast
oh, no.
office.
When we first went to the offices to audition, before we ever knew we got the job. And they would hand you a synopsis of what the show was going to be about, because nobody had heard, you know, it was a new show. And then each character, they would say, like a paragraph. Lion-O is young, he's
Naive?
Impulsive.
he's naive, thank you.
Yeah.
He's impulsive.
Impulsive
yeah.
youth.
Yeah. and a little bit of a brat sometimes. So they would tell you things about that. You remember, I'm sure, what they said about Tiger. And so you go from there, and then you see what he looks like, and you kind of start getting an idea, here's how I'm going to do it. Now with the Thundercats, we each played a Thundercat and to begin with, a mutant, or at least one. Right? And then by the time the show was over, as you recall, the Thundercats themselves were not, quote, cartoon voices. They were the voices of people. So they were basically our voices. Lion-O was I always tell people, it's my voice. The only difference is it's more dramatic. I might sit here and say to you, Sword of Woman's come to my hand. I, Lion-O, commanded. On the show, it's I, Lion-O, commanded. That's acting. You know, but with the mutants, of course, then you had to come up with something. I recall when they showed me Jackal Man, my first thought was, and he had his, he was like licking his lips, you know, and my first thought was a jackal. A jackal is, what's a jackal? It's sneaky and shrewd and wily. And then I started thinking, one of my references for him was one of my favorite television shows, Rocky and Bullwinkle, when I was a kid. And there was a character, Snidely Whiplash, who was a villain.
I'm going to get you now.
Remember that? So I put a lot of that into Jackman. Jackman, if you think about it, is
We must get the Thundercats, yes.
that greasy kind of thing, you know?
It came naturally to you, it seems.
Yes, it did. I am naturally greasy.
Very.
Yeah.
And that,
I'm sorry.
yeah, well, the idea of, where do you find voices? To a large extent, it depends on what your experience is, too. When, at that period of time, and for gentlemen of our approximate ages, we could still reach back into the black and white movies and the archetypal voices of people like Peter Lorre and Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi and, that. Any of you? Okay, I see. Okay, that's good. They're with us. So we had those kinds of references as well as whatever was going on more recently at the time, and then hopefully you can bring some creativity, as Larry's describing. You start with something that you've heard, and then build on it, and make it appropriate for.
You're right. And when you mentioned Lugosi, because of course Count Chocula was Count Dracula, so that's what I got. That thing.
And Frankenberry was Boris Karloff, based on Boris Karloff.
Strawberry flavored marshmallow.
Yeah. And in fact, that's embarrassing. My first demo reel, that reel-to-reel tape that I was telling you about, had some of that kind of stuff on it. Me trying to do the Peter Lorre or Boris Karloff or something, because even the sound of an elephant.
Really? Yeah. Oh, Peter Lorre was, remember Peter Waldron? Oh. Peter Waldron was the voice of Boo Berries, Cyril Boo Berry, and he was doing Peter Lorre.
I like blueberries. Right? My favorite cereal is blueberries, Rick.
So you bring whatever you have in you, with your experience. Hopefully you have access to it, and then make something out of it that sells, that gets you the job. Yeah.
Gentlemen, we have time for one more.
Okay.
All right.
Did you ever figure out what the camouflage was?
I have been told, and I forget who told me, and because they were drunk, I think.
Or you were drunk.
Yeah, I was drunk.
Yeah,
I would remember if they were drunk.
Yeah, that's right.
Somebody did say to me once, with some veracity, that it actually is a part in some kind of an engine, but I don't know.
Look,
In other words,
you're fucking wacko, pal.
I don't know what is.
Ladies and gentlemen,
That didn't hurt too much.